The tale of the Ghastly Grinner starts with Ethan, a kid that's going through something a lot of us experience at one time or another in our lives. The soul-crushing realization that the one and only thing you want to do in life isn't working out as well as you'd hoped. In Ethan's case, becoming a successful comic book artist. After several rejection letters, Ethan is faced with the sobering possibility of being doomed to man a cash register or mop floors for the rest of his days, endlessly lamenting his squandered talents as his 18-year-old manager tells him to clean up a mess that some bratty kid just made in aisle 3. But there's one bit of mail that gives him a ray of hope. It's a postcard telling about the grand opening of a new comic book store in his town, one cleverly called Comic Books Inc. They don't say where or when the event is, so naturally Ethan finds the place no problem. It's a veritable nerd den, complete with references to other Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes and a picture of Superman sporting a sweet 90s mullet. So the store is ran by Frankie, your run-of-the-mill free spirit that doesn't bend to societal norms such as dressing like a lady or giving people nicknames that are relevant. She gives Ethan the nickname of Cakes. How the hell she came up with that, I'll never know. So Frankie sent Ethan the letter in hope of finding a skilled enough artist to finish the final work of a comic book legend named Sylvester Uncas. A comic book legend that also happens to be her father. Although I don't know why she'd be so willing to save the person who gave her the name Frankie Uncas. Anyway, Sylvester made a comic titled The Ghastly Grinner, about a villain so hideous that his mere laugh could reduce his victims to giggling idiots. It only ran for a single issue, and then Sylvester disappeared shortly after. Frankie says that she possesses the only surviving copy, which is a total lie because the girl over in the Tale of C7 is reading one too. So she gives the quote-unquote last copy to Ethan so he can learn the story and hopefully defeat the Ghastly Grinner once and for all. The next day, Ethan is in a science class taught by someone who looks like a short-sighted Ted Turner. Well, a more short-sighted version of him considering how much money he sank into World Championship Wrestling. But the teacher doesn't take too kindly to people slacking off in his class, so he makes the comic book sleep with the fishes, see? What a dick. So Ethan takes the comic home and tries to dry it off by putting it in the microwave for 10 minutes. 10 minutes? What, does he want to set the thing on fire? It only takes a few seconds to fry a Game Boy Advance, trust me, I know. So this thing wouldn't last nearly that long, especially with the metal staples. No wonder this kid is flunking science class. I guess you could say that he was distracted by a girl calling him on the phone, so I'll give it a pass. It's actually a girl named Hooper, who looks like she's going to grow into a cat lady when she's older. We can see early indicators of her feline-ridden, floral department working dinner for one life right here. It turns out she was in the class and saw the whole thing. She was calling to comfort Ethan when his extra crispy comic destroys half the kitchen. It appears that he accidentally freed the Ghastly Grinner, essentially a living, breathing cartoon character, complete with perfect outline when he crashes through the wall. Even his cape is strong enough to leave a mark. But before escaping, the Grinner decides to turn Ethan's parents into giggling morons, which didn't seem much different than how they normally were, what with their "I've given up on life so I don't bathe and mostly spend my time watching daytime TV" like tracksuits they both wear. So Ethan runs outside to catch his breath when Hooper appears out of nowhere. It's kinda weird that she not only knew his phone number but also where he lives. Even weirder is the fact that Hooper's parents show up right at that time to have some sort of dinner party or something. Oh well, they're goners too. So the two take the time to actually read the comic and find that they're going to have a bumpy ride when the bus driver reveals that he ran into the Grinner too. He decides to go nuts and reenact his favorite Keanu Reeves movie while being sure to step on the gas and the brake in the process. Until Ethan puts a stop to that. Moving on. They get back to the comic book store and Frankie finally reveals what she could have just told Ethan the first time, thereby saving him the headache. She needs him to complete the final edition of the Ghastly Grinner and finish him off once and for all. But the Grinner was there the whole time and decides to make himself known by grabbing Frankie by the throat, surely breaking her neck in the process. But at least Hooper has an idea. Microwaves. So it's back to the perpetually unlocked school and into the easily accessible classroom that has a gigantic microwave emitter. But the teacher catches them and is furious enough to make a very ironic statement.
This is no laughing matter, young man!
But the Grinner appears and makes him lose all sense of reason, just like when the real Ted Turner decided to colorize classic movies like Frankenstein or Citizen Kane. Since the microwaves have no effect, even though the process should fry the teacher from the inside out, it's back to Comic Books Inc. to recuperate. And by recuperate, I mean do the thing that should have been done in the first place. Finish the final issue. Ethan works on his masterpiece while Hooper keeps a lookout, and not very well at that. The Grinner pulls the old act like an inanimate object in a comic book store trick and puts a stop to everything by sucking Ethan into the drawings themselves. It just so happens to be the same place that the Grinner took Frankie and her dad Sylvester Uncas as well. So it's up to Hooper and her comically oversized eraser to destroy the irreplaceable art and free them all in the process. And the day is saved as a very winded Sylvester Uncas hands the finished work to Ethan. So the moral of the story is, if you aren't succeeding in the career that you want, then just attach your name to other people's creations. It worked for Michael Bay, why shouldn't it work for anyone else? It's more different than the usual Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, what with the cartoony atmosphere and the over-the-top hammy acting by the Ghastly Grinner. For the longest time, I wasn't sure if it was from this show or from an episode of Erie, Indiana. It's just so off the wall. And I'm sure I'm not the only one to notice the similarities between the Ghastly Grinner and the Joker. He's a laughing psychopath that leaves his victims with a permanent smile plastered on their face.
You want to know how I got these scars?
Look at me!
I try not to include episodes that are based on some sort of literature, like The Midnight Ride being based on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it's still just different enough to warrant it a place in the 13 Days of Are You Afraid of the Dark?